Good morning. Welcome to Pemberley Farm. Today we're going to talk about the fourth in our series on cast iron cooking. We have a baby in the background. We always have a baby in the background, but that's okay. We're doing the fourth in the series on cast iron cooking, open fire cooking. And today we're talking about cleaning your cast iron and seasoning your cast iron. If you'll remember, last week we did actual cooking on the open fire. We showed you how to build the fire, using all the techniques that we had talked about back in our very first video. And we actually made cornbread and a cabbage and bacon and sausage dish, which was pretty yummy, you know, with all that bacon and all that sausage it had to be. And we did burn the cornbread, I will admit that. But like I told you, my husband is always the one that is in control of baking the bread that we have on these when we do the open fire cooking. And he wasn't there that day, and so we put a little too much coals on the bottom. And, you know, you live and learn. So anyway, and you know, that really is a good example for everybody. Every time it doesn't work out exactly perfect. Now, my husband probably wouldn't own up to this, but most of the time his work, you know, comes out beautiful, no stick, no burn, just golden brown. But every once in a while he messes up and something is not quite right with it. So that happens to everybody, so don't be discouraged if it happens to you. That's why we left it in, so that you know it doesn't always come out perfect. Even if you've done it for 20 or 30 years, it doesn't always come out perfect. So the first thing we're going to talk about is seasoning. Why seasoning? Well, this is iron. This is cast iron, and if you don't season it, it will rust. And so you have to keep it seasoned. So exactly what is seasoning? Now remember, I have notes because I'm old and I don't remember everything. So seasoning is simply the procedure of baking oil into the surface of the cast iron. That's all it is. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. So it creates basically a stick-proof coating on your cast iron that helps things not stick to the bottom of your pans. And it makes cleanup a whole lot easier. If you've ever cooked eggs in cast iron that wasn't well seasoned, you know what I'm saying, especially scrambled eggs. Alright, so first of all, what you're going to do, now I'll tell you this. This is the pot that we used to cook the cabbage and the meat in the other day. And I was going to video my husband cleaning it because he cleaned it for us when he got home. And so I was going to video it. Well, he didn't do it that night. He didn't do it till Saturday morning, and he got up like way before dawn. He did it while I was still asleep, and I was like, honey, I was going to video that. And anyway, he'd already done it. So I'm not going to redo what he did, but we are going to talk about it. You will see that this pot looks much better than it did the other day. So it's all nice and shiny. As a matter of fact, I think it has a little bit too much oil on it, so I'm probably going to do some takedown of the oil. But anyway, and the reason for that, the reason you don't want too much oil, and especially on the inside, is because it will become rancid. Too much oil on you want it slick, shiny, but you don't want it puddled. If it's puddled and you leave it for any length of time, the oil is going to be rancid, and you really don't want that. That's nasty, because then you have to start all over again. But anyway, I got a little ahead of myself. So what you do is you scrub the lid in the oven, say if it's a Dutch oven, in hot water and a plastic, some plastic sponge, or you know, that's got a plastic scrubby, some kind of plastic scrubby. Wash it real good in warm water and a mild detergent. Don't use the strongest dish soap that you can use. Use a mild detergent. In other words, don't necessarily use Dawn. Dawn is pretty harsh, I think. So anyway, use that and wash it really good, and don't use anything that's real abrasive. And then you're going to coat the inner and the outer part. You're going to coat all of it, the inside and the outside of the lid and of the pot itself. You're going to coat all of it, not just the inside where you've used it. And then you're going to absorb any excess oil with a folded paper towel. Like I just showed you, I think that's got a little bit too much oil on it. And so I'm going to wipe it off. I think there's a little bit too much on the inside as well. I'm going to wipe that off before we put it up. But anyway, so that's what you do. And then you place these pieces separately in a conventional oven. You could do gas or a barbecue grill, or a regular oven, electric oven, whatever you want. And you put the pot upside down from on the heat 350 to 400 degrees, and you do it for 30 to 45 minutes. Now, from experience, I will tell you, you probably are going to want to put something under it, maybe on the bottom rack. Put something to catch things, whatever drips. If oil drips off of it, if you've got a little bit too much oil, you don't want all that in your oven. So put some aluminum oil or aluminum foil or something on the bottom rack. Okay. So then after 30 to 45 minutes, you're going to remove both pieces, and you're going to put another thin layer of oil on them. Inside, outside, underneath the lid, all around. You're going to put another thin layer of oil on it, and then you're going to use paper towels, and again wipe off anything that's too much, and then bake it for another 30 to 45 minutes. And so what you're doing is building these layers of oil on your pot or your skillet or whatever it is you're using. All right, so then you just repeat this as many times as needed. You may buy a used piece that is not in too bad a shape, and it doesn't take but a time or two. You may buy a really bad piece, and you have to do it 5 times. It just depends. You'll know. You can tell by the coating. When it's pretty good. So some people do it as many as 5 to 8 times. We've never had to do that, so I just don't know. Like I say, sometimes if you buy a used piece that's real crusty and you've taken it down to bare metal, and it's like really bare metal, you might have to do that. But under normal circumstances, I can't imagine that you would have to do it that many times. All right, so again, so then what you're going to do, the last time you put it in the oven, you're going to turn the oven, whatever time that is, whether it's the first, second, third, 5th time, 8th time, whatever it is. Leave it in the oven, turn the oven off, and just let it sit overnight and come to room temperature. Just leave it alone, let it all come to room temperature. Best thing, like I say, to do it is let it do overnight, and just leave it in the oven, let it come to room temperature. All right, so now if it's sticky, so what if it's sticky? Your surface is sticky. That's what I'm telling you. It'll turn rancid. There's too much oil on it. Too much oil. So if this happens, you got to strip it down and start over. So you don't want to do that. That's why you want to be careful. You don't, more is not better when it comes to putting the oil on there. You just want a thin layer. That's all you want, just a thin layer, because you don't want to have to redo all the hard work you've just done. All right. Now you can also buy pre-seasoned cast iron, and that, I think most everything now is that you buy from Lodge or probably anywhere else is pre-seasoned. It's what's called pre-seasoned. Now, I at least rinse it with warm water and dry it out real quick. Depending on how much of a germaphobe you are, you may want to put a tiny bit of very mild soapy water in it, and then rinse it really good in hot water, and immediately dry it completely. And then what I do is I rub it down with oil, just a very tiny layer. Rub it down with oil and put it a lot of times on something like that, especially if it's a skillet, I'll just sit it on top of the stove for just a few minutes on low heat. That helps completely dry it out, because basically it's seasoned. You just want to dry out what you've done to it. So anyway, you have to make sure though every time that you're going to put it up that it's dry. You don't want it to have any water on it, and you don't want to have puddles of oil. So whether you're using cast iron that you have seasoned, that's an old piece that you have seasoned, or whether you are using pre-seasoned cast iron, you do it the same way, just by putting thin layers of oil on the surface and baking it in. And again, don't forget to oil all interior surfaces, even the underside of the lid. So now what about re-seasoning? So sometimes you really mess up and the inside of your pot looks really bad because, you know, you left food in it, or you let it stay out in the rain, or you, whatever it is, it just looks really bad. And so you have to re-season. You burned something really bad. And so you've got to re-season it. So then you're going to preheat your oven to 350. You're going to wash it with hot soapy water, just like you did in the beginning when you were seasoning. And you're going to rinse it and completely dry it. And then again, it's the same process. You're just re-seasoning just like you did in the beginning. You're just going to put a thin layer of oil on there. You're going to bake it in the oven for a little while, and then come back and check it. And if it needs doing again, then you can do it again. Again, don't forget to put your pots upside down in the oven, not right side up. All right, so cleaning. First of all, let me say, never ever store food in your cast iron. Never ever leave food stored and sit the whole pot in the refrigerator in your cast iron. That is a very unwise thing to do. It deteriorates the seasoning. And I can't imagine after a point that it's very healthy either, depending what you stored in it. So, you know, just don't do it. All the work you've done to season your cast iron, you've just undone it if you leave food stored in it. So just don't do it. Excuse me. And you don't want to have to go through all that work again of 400 degrees in your house, especially in the summertime. You just don't want to do that. So, anyway, it is something to remember. And you just don't want to have to redo it all. Now, I know that some people never ever wash their cast iron. As a matter of fact, the pot that we cook, the pot that we burn the cornbread in, that pot never gets washed. It is wiped out, clean, wiped out, and re-oiled if it's needed. Most of the time it's not, but if it does, then we put a very thin layer of oil on it, wipe it out clean, and that's how it's stored. That's the way I use my skillet in the house. My skillet that I do cornbread in the regular oven is I wipe it out, I let it completely cool, I wipe it clean with a paper towel, and I put it back in the cabinet. And, you know, it's just not a problem. And so I never wash that. But now things like what we cooked, the meats and the cabbage and all that stuff, or if you cook a pot of spaghetti or chili or whatever it is, you've got to wash that. I mean, you can't just wipe that clean. That's just not going to wipe clean. You need to wash that. And so it's not going to kill your oven. If you don't let the food sit, you take it out immediately and you wash it in warm, mild, soapy water and dry it immediately, and then put you a little thin layer of oil on it. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. So, just when you empty your pot of whatever food is left over, make sure you just take a paper towel or something and wipe out any excess, and then go ahead with washing. So, also, never ever start washing when it is still hot. If you start washing when it's still hot, especially if it's very hot, you are in danger of cracking it. And so you really don't want to do that, because these things are not cheap. And so you don't want to do that. So always, always take the food out, wipe it out with a clean paper towel, but let the pot come to room temperature before you ever put water in it and start washing it. You don't want to ruin your pan or your Dutch oven. So, again, it's just a matter of washing it like you normally would with warm water and a mild detergent. And then you're going to apply, you know, I rinse it with really hot water. And then while it's still warm, I apply the thin coat, very thin coat of oil with a paper towel. I don't just pour oil in it. I apply a very thin coat with a paper towel, and then to make sure it's completely dry, like I said, I probably will just sit it on very low on the eye, and just for a minute, just to let it warm up, and then I let it cool down before I put it away. All right, so how do you store your cast iron? Well, first of all, you don't store it in a place that's damp and wet. If you'll remember, I showed you some spots that had gotten some rust spots on it because the trailer that all this is stored in for our reenactments leaked and we didn't know it. And so some of our cast iron got wet, at least in a few spots. And so, store it where it's dry because it doesn't like to be in a wet place. It will cause it to rust if it's not well seasoned, but you don't even need to go there. Just keep it in a dry place. Also, you should store it, especially the ones with the lids, you should store it with a folded up paper towel between the lid and the oven. So that gives it a little bit of breathing room, and it allows air to circulate. So also it wouldn't hurt to put a paper towel inside to soak up any moisture that might get in there, that might be in there. So, it's not a hard thing to do to take care of your cast iron, to clean it up, and everybody has a different opinion. I realize that. Some people, have heart failure when you talk about putting it in water, but there's just some things I'm going to wash out before I use it again. And so, if you take care of it and you do it right, it's not going to be a problem. So I hope you have enjoyed our little series on open fire cast iron cooking. We have enjoyed bringing it to you, and warts and all, even burned cornbread and all, we've enjoyed bringing it to you. And so, take a look at it. Again, if you need to if you have any questions, please be sure to put them down in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and share our videos, and check us out on Facebook. On Facebook, we're Pemberley Farm, and Instagram. And so, we hope you enjoyed it, like I say. And you have a blessed day, and thank you from Pemberley Farm.